Welcome to Right on the Money, the weekly talk show with interviews you can use to help you maximize your money and optimize your financial future. Before moving forward with any of the ideas discussed on the show, always consult your financial advisor, insurance professional, or tax consultant. Looking for financial help or a second opinion? We can help you in your search. And now, your host of Right on the Money, syndicated financial columnist and money-colored commentator, Steve Savant.
Well, welcome everyone to our money tips for the new year to help us get on track for 2016. And here to bring us up to speed is registered financial consultant and investment advisor, Ted Meyer. Welcome to Right on the Money, Ted.
Thank you. Welcome.
And Happy New Year to you.
As you too.
Well, last week we talked all last week on debt. It was kind of somewhat depressing, but we kind of got through it. I want to look at our taxes. On our first segment, we're going to talk about money tips. And one of the biggest is I'd like to keep more of my money. So we had to think about tax management. But I'm looking at this history here. Personal income tax history, actually, in comparison to when we started paying income tax, thank you, Teddy Roosevelt, we actually, from 1914 till now, we're paying pretty low rates.
We're on the lower end of it. Yeah, historically, we're at historically low levels.
Think about this. We're in a marginal progressive tax bracket. And everybody says all the time, how do I know if this tax product or this tax advantage investment, how do I know if it's really impacting me? Well, I don't know until I find out and discover your effective tax bracket. I don't know what your deductions are, your exemptions are, your tax credits that you use back on. I don't know if you're using adjusted gross income, which is at the bottom of the first page of the 1040, or we're actually subject to modified and adjusted gross income. I don't know. I have to do the math. But once I find that out, I can kind of find out where I land on this tax bracket.
Exactly. Having a marginal tax bracket is a little bit different. Most folks go in there and they think that if they're paying X amount of dollars and that equals a 25 or 28% bracket, that's what their rate is. Mm-hmm. The effective rate you just talked about is a big difference because as we step up, the rate's actually a little bit lower. So.
And by the way, if you want to say, hey, Steve, I need this for 2015 for my taxes in 2016, if you want to just write me at steve@rightonthemoneyshow.com, I'll send it to you. I'm looking at the differences between the 2015 and the 2016. Not much difference here. There was not much of change, a little bit, but not much.
A couple of dollars changed on the married filing jointly, things like that. But overall, the rates are the same. The dollar amounts just changed a little bit.
Now, your practice in Arizona is really centralized around the boomer community, and yet you're an Xer. Do you feel sometimes there's a generation gap in the way you have to approach guys like myself who are baby boomers?
A little bit. When we look at things from a Gen X perspective versus the baby boomers, I think we get a little more detail on a few things. And from that standpoint, we find that the boomers are looking for a little more constructive.
Trying to figure out what they want?
Yeah.
Think about this. If I'm a boomer, and I am, I'm looking for the most money I can keep. So taxes is the first issue. My second issue is my expenses. We'll get into that in another segment. Everybody always talks about, I'm trying to manage my taxes. This is the first place I go.
Yeah, first place you go is looking at your taxes that you're paying. We're going to be coming into tax season here shortly, April. It's the end of the year. Everyone's going to start getting their statements. They're going to look at the taxes that they paid on stuff. And so what we want to look at, one of the first areas is your interest and dividend income that you're getting. A lot of folks aren't using that money for income, but yet they're still paying taxes on it. So there's an opportunity there to find a way to defer those taxes out if you're not using them.
Okay, so let's just walk through that to make sure everybody understands. So there's money that I'm not using. I'm using it today. I'm still paying. If you have your money in CDs, it's terrible. I could go out to bankrate.com to see if there's anybody paying you a little bit more, maybe a little bit more, no brick, no mortar.
Yep.
I don't have to go to an actual bank, but those numbers are not there. And I have to pay taxes on the money whether I use it or not.
Exactly. The 1099s will come out in late January. You had a CD that was paying you a whopping maybe 1% last year, and now you're going to pay tax on that money. That's a 5-year CD. You're trying to roll it forward. It makes no sense to pay that kind of tax.
Now, what about the dividends? You know, people are making dividends off their fund, their non-qualified funds,
non-qualified
stocks,
fund dividends.
things of that nature.
Well, with the dividend section on that, if they're not using the dividends, obviously they're reinvesting them.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of one of the big things where we're going to face in about 2 weeks. Many of us are going to be receiving our statements from our mutual funds, our ETFs. And some people have experienced losses. And by the way, if you didn't catch some of the things that we talked about prior to the close of 2015, we might have been able to mitigate some of that by doing tax harvesting tactics and strategies.
Right.
But kind of too late for that now.
It's too late now. We're December 30th.
You can just do it for this year. But let's just go down this. We're going to receive our statements about the last week of January for the fourth quarter, or i.e. the end of the year.
Correct.
All right. We're going to get this. And I have many clients, and I've been doing this for 32 years, and I'm shocked. My client says, Steve, I had a couple loser mutual funds. I'm reviewing it for him. And he goes, but a week later, I received a 1099. How can I have a taxable event on a fund that actually showed a loss?
Yeah, this is one of the misconceptions a lot of people don't realize. If the fund loses money, that doesn't mean that every single investment inside the fund lost money. They have sold out. The investment advisor, fund manager may have sold out of that sometime in June, July, August, showed a profit on that specific stock that they had inside the fund. Even though the fund overall lost money at the end of the year, you're still going to get a 1099 on every single stock that actually made money that year.
So
it's kind of a double whammy. You lost money on the stock, and now you're paying. You lost money on the fund, and now you're paying tax on it.
So just to make sure I understand the educational side of this, so my mutual funds have an inventory of many stocks.
Correct.
Okay, and the overall mutual fund all over probably lost, could have lost, but I had some winners in there.
Very correct.
And I still have to pay gain or ordinary income or whatever it is.
Correct.
Right. I have to pay taxes on that.
Yes, that is
Okay,
true.
see, I think most people are like me. I'm just thinking, how can that be? I have a loser fund, and I lost money. I still had to pay the fund expenses, and now you're telling me I have a tax bill.
Yeah, that's what happens on the mutual fund side of it. And as you go forward and you see these, when you get your statements coming here in January, take a look at them.
Yeah, I think we need to not only take a look at the 1099 statement, but you have to make sure that you match this up correctly, and then you need to become proactive. This is the biggest issue. Okay, we missed 2015. Let's start thinking on how we're going to do this in 2016. So if I'm working with an advisor, and of course I recommend that you always work with a good advisor who knows what he's talking about. And I need him to know this up front. I want you to mitigate taxes. There's some people, by the way, clients I have, that they say, Steve, I don't even care about taxes. I don't even get that. Yeah. But let's just say we're now up to speed, and most clients want to have the most money they can have. Let's think about judiciously tax harvesting at the end of 2016 so that we don't have to talk about this. Now, last thing, if you say, Steve, I saw this, and if you say, I need to really think about this, I don't think my advisor's doing taxes, I don't think he's up to speed on it, then that's the time when you need to think, hey, maybe I need a second opinion.
Correct.
I want to go to this next thing. This is this whole new thing for clients. They don't know anything about this, and this could be a boom, especially if you're upper middle class to affluent. This thing called qualified longevity annuity contracts.
Yep.
Now, the government is involved in this.
Correct.
They picked one product, and it's the only suitability product you can use. It's called deferred income annuities. What's that all about?
And deferred income annuities is just a place where you'll park some money for a certain period of time. And inside the QLAC, what you can do is you can take part of your IRA, and instead of, from a lot of our clients, they don't want to pay tax on their IRA. It's additional income that they find a way to somehow move to the sidelines. You can use the QLAC, park money in there, and defer taking the income on that up to, I think, age 85. Now, you can only do it on 25% or $125,000 your balance, which everyone's less because you're capped on it. But this is a nice way for you to take part of your IRA distributions that we do have some clients that come to us and say, I don't want to take any of this.
I don't need
between
my
my Social Security,
RMDs.
between my income, my pension, I don't need my RMDs. What do I do with them? So some of them take them and give them to their kids. Other folks say, I'm going to use this QLAC, and I'm going to defer payments on this.
And just keep in mind, remember, required minimum distribution, 70 and a half, there's a major penalty. If you're getting up around that age, you need to make sure your advisor's up to speed on your birthday and the law. Now, this QLAC, this qualified longevity annuity contract, uses a deferred income annuity. That deferred income annuity you can stall or forestall RMDs. So you could even ladder this. You could buy some that begin at 70, 75, 80, 85. So I think this tactic is really great. Now, again, I think most people that are middle class and below are probably not going to use it. They probably need the money. Yeah, so they're probably not going to see that. Now, so in your thinking, when you do this, have you started using this? Because this is relatively new.
QLAC just came out, I want to say probably second quarter of 2015. It's a brand new concept. A lot of folks are asking questions on it. We've done a few cases. There's very few carriers out there that recommend it. But it's basically gives you the opportunity to defer payments. It's not really an income producer for you. It's not really a growth vehicle. It's just simply taking the income that you're supposed to take for your RMD and deferring that out. So it's very specialized, but a lot of folks have a lot of interest in finding out about it.
Well, I like the ability to control my
That's
destiny.
what it is. It's controlling your destiny.
And it sounds like, and I think I heard you say, I can take up to 25%
or 125,000,
whichever is less, and that's mother and father if you're married.
Correct.
Unbelievable. Remember, if you're listening to our show on radio, iTunes, or a podcast, you can view the video version online at rightonthemoneyshow.com and request information from this segment. In our second segment, we're going to be talking about protecting your financial legacy with Ted Meyer. We'll be right back after the break. The number one fear of American seniors is outliving their money in retirement. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and talk show host. The Guinness Book of World Records for living the longest is held by Gene Calment, who lived 122 years, 164 days. And that's a fact. But it seems like science fiction to consider living to age 150. But according to a leading gerontologist, that person has already been born. Every day in America, seniors are turning age 100. It's the fastest growing segment among retirees today. And tomorrow, you may very well be one of them. Could your retirement plan go beyond age 90, age 95, or even age 100? Now you can purchase guaranteed lifetime income no matter how long you live. And that income can also include annual increases to help maintain the purchasing power of your retirement dollar. So just go to www.rightonthemoneyshow.com and click on the free income calculator to determine how much guaranteed lifetime income you can purchase. Well, welcome back to Right on the Money and our money tips for the new year for 2016. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. In this segment, we're talking about protecting your financial legacy with registered financial consultant and investment advisor, Ted Meyer. Well, Ted, I have to say there's a lot of planning going on. I want to protect as a boomer, I'm just telling you, as a boomer, we've gotten ourselves in trouble. I'm just going to confess my sin. We're taking care of our parents for long-term care. We're still paying tuition on our kids and the generation of our kids.
Generation.
And then I'm sitting there trying to make a retirement plan. Okay, so
you're not alone.
I'm a triple decker sandwich, I think I am.
Yep.
Okay, but I want to protect I figure out a way that whatever I'm not going to spend, if I have anything left, I want to be able to send it to the appropriate people, my kids, my grandkids, maybe a charity of my choice.
Correct.
So when I'm looking at it, let's talk about the first one because I'm no attorney and we don't practice law on the show.
Yep.
But there is some legacy protection we can do to escape probate.
Right.
Talk about that.
Probate's a big one. Everyone out there that we talk to wants to avoid probate, whether you're...
Now, why is that? What's the economic consequences of not doing it?
Okay, so probate is a legal process by which they distribute your assets upon your death. You typically create a will get you into probate. Mm-hmm. From there, you want your assets, your house, your cars, your investments to go to specific people. Probate is the process by which that gets done. And because it's a legal process, and there's a lot of steps in there, I think there's about 42 steps in probate, this can take anywhere from 8 to 10 months, all the way up to several years. I have a couple of attorneys who work with that have had probates that have gone on for 5 to 10 years because probate only gets completed once everyone agrees on what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so the number one thing people are trying to avoid is going through the probate process. Arizona is unique in that it only takes $50,000 of assets to qualify for the formal probate. People, when they sit down with a lot of investment advisors, will come to me and say, well, I don't have an estate large enough to go through probate. I've been told that I need $600,000 or $1 million, now $5 million, because they confuse that with the estate, with the
unified credit.
Unified credit.
Right.
And it's actually the probate threshold dollar amount. Every state has one. Arizona is $50,000. So if you have over $50,000 in Arizona, you qualify for probate. Nobody wants to go through it because it's expensive. Attorneys are involved, accountants involved, assessors are involved, and it takes a long time. And the beneficiaries start fighting over it.
All right, so we do not want to go through the
nothing to do
meat
with
grinder
probate.
of the
Correct.
state's probation
Correct.
courts. Okay.
Correct.
All right.
You don't want the states dictating where your stuff's going to go.
That's right. Okay, so we're gonna partner up with an attorney.
Yep.
And we're gonna place these documents in force so that we don't go through probate itself. Okay, I get that.
That is correct. Yeah, you're going to put a trust together.
All right, now let's talk about, I noticed that you talk about this in your seminars about protecting from spendthrift children. In other words, they got a spending disease, right? Well, apparently I didn't do very good I didn't do a very good job in my parental oversight on the money issue. And by the way, just a little side note, in America, it is the number one lacking education. I go to the place where my wife teaches, where my daughter teaches. I've seen my kids go through school. Nobody knows about a checkbook. They don't talk about economics. They don't talk about value of money. It's really a place where we need to really up our game.
They don't teach that.
Talk about this, though, because I want protection. If my kids are spendthrift children, I want protection from it.
And we all have them. I mean, I have 2 kids right now, 12 and 9. I already know which one likes to spend money and which one's to save. And I think if you ask everybody out there, everyone will say, these children of mine, they know how to manage money. These other kids, not so much.
That always amazes me. I have kids the same way. How can they live in the same household and have 2 different dispositions on money?
You know what? I have no idea how that happens. But what we want to do is make sure that the ones that like to spend the money, we can find a way to control how much they spend and when they do it. So the idea of saving the money or safeguarding the money from spendthrift children, you can achieve that through a trust. You can set up parameters in there where certain children get assets when they should, and other children get assets over a longer period of time.
So if I have a bad seed, I could kind of exclude them.
We had a case last week where a doctor came in. He's got 3 children. 2 of the sons are doctors themselves. The one daughter is not. And the 2 sons, he says, as soon as they pass away, as soon as mom and dad are gone, give them the assets outright. The daughter, on the other hand, who's an artist, has a little bit of trouble managing money, he wants to set up his estate so that when they're gone, the daughter will simply receive income from the trust over a certain period of time, because they're afraid that once she gets it, she could blow that. The average inheritance in this country is spent in 90 days.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable
That's a
how
shocker.
fast this money goes. People get it, they buy a new boat, they buy a new house, they
And
take
you
a
can
trip.
direct this from the grave, basically.
From the
is what you're
grave. That's
saying.
the whole idea behind a trust, is you direct where the money goes and how it goes from the grave. Correct.
So if you wanted to give your child, if you're really concerned about him blowing a huge piece of a principal that he just received,
Correct.
You could amortize this over maybe payments.
Oh, payments over 5 years, 10 years, the rest of their life. Absolutely.
Okay. What happens? I love this. What happens when your in-laws become outlaws? I mean, I'm gifting to my daughter. I
Yep.
love my daughter. I'm giving her money, and she's married to Mr. Wonderful now, who's turned out to be Mr. Wrong.
Right.
How do I protect against that?
Yeah, he was Mr. Wonderful right now when it was happening, but now it turns out that several years down the road, there's a divorce taking place, and now the in-law, your favorite son-in-law, has become your favorite son outlaw. And so what we want to do is we want to use the money in the trust to protect the daughter from receiving some of this stuff, because obviously there's probably going to be a divorce proceeding going on. And in this divorce, whatever the daughter owns now becomes part of the divorce proceedings. So through the trust, you can withhold the money from the daughter until divorce proceedings are done and make sure that the outlaws aren't able to receive any of it.
Wow. Well, I'm thinking about, never did a prenup ever have its weight in gold.
Yes, very much so.
Especially if you're marrying into money, and nobody does that they say they're not marrying into money. But I like the ability to be able to contractually or somewhere with a trust actually make sure my children get this. And of course, remember now we're in my state, I'm in a community property state.
Yep.
So that's going to be different.
50-50.
And you got to find out how things are dispersed in your state. So when you're sitting there saying, Steve, what kind of state am I in? Go ahead and look it up. I'm sure your attorney can help you on this. You need to know those issues and
Correct.
the engagement, the rules of engagement on how to protect your children. I mean, with America, I think the number was like 70% divorced of my generation, the baby boomers. That's quite high. So the odds are high. Prenup might be the way to go. Some of the things you're talking about, because if my in-laws become my outlaws, I'm giving money to somebody else.
Correct. You're giving money to people that you're no longer affiliated with.
Okay, charitable giving. At the end of just a couple weeks ago, we were in 2015. We were doing the last second charitable gifting. Cash is king.
Yep.
We were taking loser stocks and unloading them because might as well get lower yielding stock. We were giving it away. We were giving away high stocks that were actually good
Correct.
gain. I don't want to pay the taxes. There's a lot of ways that you can actually give money away. But tell me, first of all, how many of your clients are really have a disposition to give, even if what happens when their heart is so big but their wallet is so small?
I think probably about half the people that come in our office that sit down with our attorneys have some form or fashion of charitable giving on their mind, whether it's to a university, a hospital, a church, something
Only
like that.
for wealthy, affluent clients?
No, it's
or
not really. It's across the board. Even ones that don't have as much still want to be able to give something. They want to create a legacy. Typically, we see this a lot in parents that don't have children. And instead of giving it to siblings, nieces and nephews, they turn around and they say, I'm looking at my alma mater. I'm looking at my local church, and that's where I want the money to go.
It has to be an IRS-approved nonprofit organization.
That is correct.
Okay, and there's many ways to give. Cash is one. I just mentioned one. There's a
Cash is
charitable
one,
remainder
stocks is one.
trust. There's so many angles on this. I could be actually. Some people like to buy life insurance.
Life insurance is
and
another key.
So just to pay it up, and the actual charity gets the death benefit. But when I'm thinking about targeting charitable giving, the first thing I want to make sure is that all my children know what I'm doing. Because if you're giving away real assets from your children, they're going to start questioning the financial advisor's, intent here, right?
Kids are going to look at it and say, that's my money you're giving away.
Yeah, you just gave it away.
Correct.
So when I'm thinking about this, when you're talking about your protecting your legacy, your first line of defense of things that you want to do with your money, you're targeting your beneficiaries would be your first generation children.
Correct.
So think about this: children, then your grandchildren. I'm a grandfather now. Man, I love these grandkids.
Yep.
But is it possible that I'm going to live to such an extent that we're going to be talking about 4-generational planning, and I might be looking at my great-grandkids?
Very seriously.
So before I even get to charity, I might be talking 4 generations.
4 generations. 2012 mortality tables came out, and we are living much, much longer. We'll get into that in a later segment. But again, 4 generations. You're called the sandwich generation right now, as you mentioned, because you're taking care of your parents and your kids. Well, coming here soon, you might be adding a 4th generation into that.
It's amazing when you think about human longevity on a scale that's just mind-blowing when you think that Professor Debris, I think he teaches in Europe. He's a gerontologist. Says that a person that's going to be 150 years old. Hard to believe this. 150 years old has already been born.
Yes, I saw that.
And by the way, but it doesn't. In backdrop. Remember, the Guinness Book of World Records. Jean Clement died at 122 years, 164 days. That doesn't sound that far off.
Not anymore.
Wow. Remember, if you're listening to our show on radio, iTunes, or a podcast, you can view the video version online at rightonthemoneyshow.com and request information on this segment. In our third segment, we're going to be talking about the Retirement Red Zone with Ted Meyer. We'll be right back after the break. The Guinness Book of World Records for living the longest is held by Jean Calment, who lived 122 years, 164 days. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and talk show host. Will you live to be a super centenarian like Jean? Of course, no one knows how long they're going to live or if their family history will be any indication of their lifespan, especially in light of constant medical advancements. But the odds are ever increasing that a significant segment of seniors may live to age 100. But without some idea of your life expectancy, it's difficult to make plans for the future, especially for retirement. While there's no exact science in computing how long you live, you can get an idea by taking a life expectancy test. Then you can use the results to create a timeline for your own retirement plan. And don't forget, when you take the life expectancy test, always answer the questions honestly. So go to www.rightonthemoneyshow.com and click on the free life expectancy calculator and get an idea if you're really ready for retirement. Well, welcome back to Right on the Money and our money tips for the new year 2016. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. In this segment, we're talking about the Retirement Red Zone. I love that. With registered financial consultant and investment advisor, Ted Meyer. Well, Ted, we're in the middle. This is the first week, wild card weekend.
Wild card weekend's coming up.
Oh, my gosh. We're having a field day. And, of course, my team's in. Loving that. And I'm all over it. And I have to say that it's taken a little time because I'm from the Midwest and I moved out here. It's a little time, but I've been converted. I'm an Arizona Cardinal fan now. But when we talk about the Retirement Red Zone, now I notice Prudential does a great job on the air. I love their commercials. Yep. I mean, they make this visual.
Yep.
And you start seeing, oh my gosh, my retirement, I better get going.
I'm getting really close to it.
Okay. I've noticed in the NFL, when we're talking about getting the retirement zone, that they have statistics, and I mean they're mind-numbing how they keep stats on this.
Absolutely.
They have statistics. The moment they call the red zone from the 20, you're on the offense, you're heading into the red zone, from the 20 all the way to the goal line. So many people can rack up serious yardage in the NFL, and they get to the red zone, and either they don't make the 3-point, or they don't make it at all, much less they don't even score and cross the line. Right. There's a red zone in retirement, and it's critical. Why don't you define that for me?
The red zone in retirement, we define it as the 5 years before retirement and the first 5 years after retirement.
Oh.
Because it's in that time period where as you're getting close to retirement, you'll need to make a change, a fundamental change in your focus or shift in your investment strategies. And then the first 5 years after retirement, that's when you really don't know what the day-to-day is going to be like. And so you don't want to have things set up day one because you're going to have adjustments as you go the first, second, third, fourth year of retirement. So that 10-year period, right around when you retire, is very critical.
Well, when I'm thinking of my last 5 years before I retire and then the next 5 years, so I got a decade I got to really pay attention to. That's what you're really saying.
Yeah, you got to pay a lot of attention to everything that's going on.
And everything is correlated. Remember, you may be taking something out of your qualified plan that's going to cause a tax on your Social Security. You just got to really think through. There's a strategy here. This is not a do-it-yourself issue, is it?
This is not a do-it-yourself issue. It has been for a long time. And I think what people are starting to find out is you now see folks that are retired and they've gone back to work because they didn't plan, they didn't make a fundamental shift in their planning structure from the 5 years before and the 5 years after retirement. They didn't plan, they didn't change their focus. And next thing you know, things didn't work out.
I think this 5-year red zone, on the front end especially, is going to get pushed out farther because, Social Security, if you're going to max it, you want to wait till 70 if you can. Yep. I'm just saying if you have the cash flow to do it. You may have to work some more years than you planned on. So instead of having the retirement zone, everybody's saying the retirement zone is the full retirement age, marking the Social Security benchmark. Right. But I don't know if that's really the way to go anymore.
I think that's changing. As a society, as we're living longer, retirement back in the day started at 62, 65, lasted 5, 6, 7 years, and it was pretty much done. Now retirement is a 20 to 30 year period of time, And it's usually starting 65 to 70. And even for my generation as a Gen Xer, I think it's going to be 70, 75 where people are going to finally hang it up.
I used to watch Willard Scott every day on the Today Show say happy
100
birthday
years
to
old.
a handful of Americans that are returning age 100.
Yeah.
And the Centurion Club or the Centenarian Club is probably the fastest growing demographic
Yeah.
as far as the actual senior age. So when I'm looking at me retiring, even if I bumped myself to 70, I might be living to 90, 95. My wife, who's in excellent shape, always eats the right things, exercise, she's going to see 100 more than likely.
Absolutely.
So now when I'm looking at the retirement zone, I've noticed though, I want to, since everything's correlated, I could be taking out qualified plans. I could, if I'm taking my Social Security out at the same time, that things interrelate and cause tax issues.
Correct.
So I want to talk about taxes during that time because I want to reduce my tax obligation. And there's strategies for this.
There are strategies for that. A lot of folks say that as I retire, my tax is going to go down. I'll make less money. Well, that's yes and no, because we've been contributing to our qualified plans all these years, and we have a significant amount in there. When we get to age 70 and have to take out what's called the RMD, required minimum distribution, there are things we can do to offset that. Okay, because now we're in a distribution phase of our money instead of the accumulation phase. And while we were accumulating money, we didn't pay as much tax on it. Now that we're taking it out of all these accounts, the taxes go up. So there are strategies to minimize or reduce the amount of taxes I have to pay on some funds I'm not using.
I've noticed this is kind of a great metaphor or an allegory. Here in Phoenix, we're surrounded by mountains. And I know a lot of people love to climb, and we see it all the time. Every time there's a rescue on the mountain, it's almost always in the descent, never in the ascent.
Correct.
I've noticed that if people are going to make mistakes in their retirement, it's not that much in accumulation, it's actually during distribution.
That's very well said. We have a lot of folks that did a nice job of saving money to get to retirement. And when they hit retirement, they start taking money out. They take it from the wrong spots at the wrong time, cause themselves taxes.
Okay, so let's talk about this, Ted. So there are certain things that I need to do in sequence. That's what
Yes.
you're saying.
Yes.
The sequence of return matters.
Sequence of returns matters critically when you retire. Because if you retire at the wrong time and the markets are doing the wrong thing, your money can be spent a lot quicker.
So again, I've emphasized this all my career. This is not a do-it-yourself plan. There's so much going on that whether it's taxes. Let me talk about another thing too. I've noticed that a lot of us are invested in. I have money in funds, ETFs. I still believe in all that, but I also look at their expense loads now, and we're going to get into this in the last thing. But I also want to make sure, hey, am I getting a pretty efficient deal on my investments? And I just want you to touch on this because we're going to manage this in the last segment, but talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, the one thing that people don't really pay a lot of attention to is the expenses of their funds, whether it's inside their 401k or whether it's mutual funds they own outside of it. There's a lot of costs inside of there that we can control. The performance of the fund, that's the one thing we really can't control. So when it comes to investing, you want to be diversified. The things we can control are the cost of the fund, the taxes we pay, and how we're diversified.
Okay, so let's just make sure we got this now because I want to play in the red zone.
Yes.
I don't know about you guys, but everybody wants to get in the end zone and not just live in the red zone.
Getting to the red zone is not quite as important as getting in the end zone. You'll see it as your analogy of the NFL in the early on. Teams that get in the red zone a lot and walk away with 3 instead of 7,
Or
eventually,
none.
or none. Eventually, the other team gets in there and they score 7s and they catch up. So when we're in the red zone, we want to make sure we can put it in the end zone. And managing some of our costs and expenses is a way to do that.
Yeah, and I think that if you become really aggressive towards your own plan, where you say, I want to make sure I'm maximizing my tax strategy. I want to make sure I'm maximizing my fund expenses. And the biggest thing, I tell you, we could probably do a whole show on this. What should I take out first? What comes out in distribution in order? I mean, I'm kind of afraid now as a boomer. We're taking the wrong thing out at the wrong time, and it's going to impact our lifestyle. That's by the bigger issue. Our lifestyle later on in our senior living.
I just had a woman in my office about 2 weeks ago who paid off her house out of her IRA account because her accountant told her that's the place to do it. Unknowingly, she took out $150,000 and had a nice tax bill show up after January 1 and had no idea.
How could the CPA fiduciary not know that he would be bumping her into another bracket? Whole nother bracket by the sale of their home. That's ridiculous. I mean,
so it's really put her in some financial straits. So a lot of times the advice you're getting out there, you need to make sure you're getting it from the right
I
people.
would have thought from a CPA I'd be okay.
I would have thought so too.
I guess it's time to call one of the litigatory agents or attorneys on this because especially when you think about this, you got to treat seniors right.
Correct.
And if you're telling them to do things that are not really well and they could have done something else, I think it's time to call some attorney. I want our seniors to be protected.
Yep.
And I want our advice to be golden, as if these were our parents. Let's talk about, I'm always thinking about no more paycheck. I have all this money in my accounts. I know Social Security is online. It's ready to pay me. But I'm so used to getting a check every 2 weeks, and now it's going to stop. Now what?
That's a big change. When folks are getting near retirement, they look at the amount of money that they have and they say to their spouse, their significant other, we have enough money to retire. But they usually don't finish the sentence off, which is if we don't lose it or if we don't mismanage it. Because you said when you retire, that money that's set aside for retirement, you're not touching that when you're working. But the second you retire and that paycheck goes away, now you're touching all that money. And so it becomes critically important that we manage that expectation going forward.
Oh, well, I don't know how to manage this because if you've been working 35, 40 years, and all of a sudden you got to say, hey, in 6 months, I'm not getting a regular check here. How do I start pulling money out? And the market may still mitigate what I can or cannot take out, right? So I'm wondering, about income that's that I can depend on. How's that? Income that I can depend on.
Yeah, we're looking for guaranteed sources. Your paycheck that showed up every 2 weeks, every month was a guaranteed source of income. When you retire, we may have Social Security, we may have pension. We want to find a way to create another pension for ourselves. Find a way to take some of my retirement assets, create another stream of income that can come into my house, dedicated month over month, year over year, for the rest of my life.
One of the rules of thumb I always heard is, you got to be having about 60 to 70% of your normal paycheck is better be in your retirement income.
That's about a fair number.
Is that a fair number? I say it's still not enough. You're making me nervous. I just want to make sure that we have the ability to go ahead and look at these things. Listen, if you're listening to our show on radio, iTunes, or podcasts, you can view our video version online at rightonthemoneyshow.com and request information from this segment. In our fourth segment, we'll be talking about the number one fear in retirement with Ted Meyer. Over 50% of those who have life insurance may be in the wrong rate class and more than likely are paying too much for their coverage. Hello everyone, I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and talk show host. Sometimes you just need a second opinion to determine if you're actually getting the best deal. The insurance industry has just updated the mortality tables to reflect longer life expectancy, so premiums are expected to go down. And additionally, there are life insurance companies that are more benevolent if you have a medical problem than other companies. And when you consider that most life insurance companies offer lifestyle credits for those who practice good living habits, well, you could save a lot. But an additional value here is the vast majority of life insurance companies offer a free blood and urine analysis, a test that costs hundreds of dollars and with no obligation to buy. With hundreds of life insurance companies competing for your business, you could pay substantially less. So if you have a life insurance policy and you want a second opinion, just go to www.rightonthemoneyshow.com and click on the life insurance for a second opinion. Well, welcome back to Right on the Money and our money tips for the new year for 2016. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. In this segment, we're talking about the number one fear in retirement with Ted Meyer, registered financial consultant and investment advisor. Ted, we're talking about the number one fear. And by the way, sometimes fear is false evidences appearing real. This is not a false evidence appearing real.
Absolutely
this is a warranted phobia that seniors have. Hey, I don't know if I'm going to outlive my money. Yeah. What happens if I run out? What if I live longer? What if I become Willard Scott, one of Willard Scott's 100 happy birthday on the Smucker's jar? Yep. I mean, those are real, authentic fears. So we got to address these fears, and I say that for baby boomers especially, we have 2 or 3 compounding fears. One is we're going to be living a lot longer. There's one.
Yes.
So it's going to cause a problem.
Correct.
And longevity is a fear multiplier or a factor multiplier because it touches everything else. If we're going to live longer, we're going to need more money. If we're going to live longer, we have to have long-term care because the odds are high that we're going to have some kind of an event, morbidity event later on in our life. So there's issues here. So let's talk about that. How do you deal with your baby boomer clients that come into your office and you say, man, these guys have a fear here?
Yeah, first part is really identifying the fear. With the mortality tables that came out and with the fact that we are living longer. In the previous section, we talked about retirement being 5, 10, 12 years. Retirement now 20, 30 years for some folks. And so getting them to realize that they're going to be around when they're 85, 88, 90, 92, we really have to take a look at it and understand if I'm going to be around for another 20 to 30 years in retirement, are my retirement assets going to last me for the next 20 or 30 years?
I've noticed there was an article, I can't remember where it is, and I'll have to dig it out of the archives, but it actually said that people that have income coming in on a regular basis that they can depend on are some of the most happiest people during retirement, and their psychological profile is better.
Correct.
Because remember, we're always talking about, hey, can you take the risk in retirement? What kind of beta risk does your investments come and carry with, right? We're going to talk about that in the last segment.
Yep.
But that's why I'm talking about fear of retirement. Okay, so let's say I have it. Let's say
We've got a fear of retirement.
Let's say I have the
Exactly.
fear of retirement because I think I'm going to run out of money.
Correct.
What's one of the first things I can do to try to mitigate that?
To mitigate the fear is find out where we can have guaranteed income sources coming from. The first thing that makes everyone in retirement, as you said from your letter or from the article, relax and have a little peace of mind is understanding how much money is coming in and how long it'll be coming in. So the first thing we want to do is we want to address or identify the sources of income that we have, and then find out if it's going to make up what we need it to. We have expenses in retirement, typically not as much as they were when we were younger. As we get older, our expenses will drop a little bit. We won't be doing as much. But living longer has outpaced death as the number one fear because outliving our money. Nobody wants to be 85 or 90 and run out of money. So first thing we do is we take a look at the assets of the estate, find out how much money is there, how much money we have coming in on a guaranteed source. The second thing we look at is what are our expenses? Is there a way to manage our expenses going forward so that we can make sure that the income is coming in at a greater rate than what's going out?
Okay, so in fact, a lot of us have to think about this. You know, one of the things we talked about last week was carrying our mortgage into retirement. No generation has ever done this before. So the baby, we're the first ones that are doing this.
Yep.
We're trying to pay our parents' LTC costs. We're trying to take care of our kids, our own kids in tuition payments for college. And now we're sitting there with our own issues, right, in retirement.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking there's three little areas. You know, we talked about the red zone last segment. We're talking about there's three stages of most seniors. They call it, and I got this from our popular author, Tommy Hagna. Tommy says there's the go-go years, the so-so years, and the no-go years. And at the first, everybody's going around. You're taking trips. You're taking vacations. You're going all over the place. And because I say that, he said, why do you bring that up, Steve? Because everybody is accommodating their domestic spending, the spending that they're going to have to live on. But I say, you aren't incorporating normal travel to see kids, grandkids, vacations, and you need to get that in your foundation or you're building your floor retirement that's guaranteed.
Correct.
So to me, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal.
I want you to speak to one thing that I'm really concerned about on this whole segment of retirement. Okay, so let's say I got a guaranteed, but I don't know if inflation's going to go up or not. I have no idea. But I think my normal commodities, I think gas is going to be maybe a problem. Maybe I think food is going to be a problem. Stuff that doesn't even fall on the government CPI. I mean, I don't even know why that happens, right?
Right.
But let's just say I'm concerned about that. Is there any way to take a guaranteed product and get a little bit of step up and ratchet up my income?
Yeah, actually there is. You know, let's take a look at Social Security, then we'll take a look at some other guaranteed products. Social Security has a COLA rider that, unfortunately, in 2016, I don't think we're going to be getting one.
No, we're not.
And I think that's the third time in the last 5 years that's happened.
Yeah, and 4 overall. Think about this. You know, Social Security used to bump. That'd be an auto bump
Yeah.
up, right?
And the auto bump up used to be
Yeah.
average between 2.5% and 3%. I think it was about 2.8% was
Can't
the
depend on
average.
that anymore.
Can't depend on that.
No.
So we've had Social Security. Hopefully we'll get a COLA rider on that. We have our RMDs that we're taking out. If we're fortunate enough to have a pension, we may have that. Typically the pensions don't come with COLA riders. There are other guaranteed products out there, though, that you can park a sum of money that can go in there and you can structure income for the rest of your life and get a COLA rider on there. Have the increasing income that you desire for the rest of your life.
Okay, now we talked in our first segment, we talked about QLACs, qualified longevity annuity contracts that actually use deferred income annuities. So I could buy, if I knew I was going to buy income, a block of income, and I was going to use it immediately, I could look at a single premium immediate annuity
SPIA,
with
correct.
a COLA rider, right? If
Correct.
I'm hearing correctly.
Yep.
I was shocked to find this out. I was reading and I was looking at the entire block of SPIA, single premium immediate annuities, and DIA, deferred income annuities, and looking at how high up I could ratchet this. And you could get a step up to 6% a
Every
year annually.
single year.
Now, think about this. I mean, that blows my mind.
Yes. Where else out there can you get a 6% guaranteed growth on your money every single year? This isn't the 80s and 90s anymore. We're in the new financial era here since the year 2000. And I think with the rates of return that people were expecting, we used to be able to run financial illustrations showing an 8% rate of return. Those are now down to 4, maybe even dropping down to 3. So you've got a product right now that can get you 4 to 6% guaranteed roll up on your money every year, increase in income. It's a slam dunk.
Yeah, when you think about it and you're looking at, remember, when you're embedding guaranteed income, remember all the actual product expense loads, everything, they've already been accommodated for. So you get if your payout rate, and by the way, I just want to bring this up just so we're all straight on the compliance, your payout rate, which may be 6%, is not really your credited interest rate.
Correct.
You know, and I want to make sure we all see this. Most of the people I hear on radio that talk about this or write about this
very
always
confused.
talk about the payout rate, and I'm saying yes, but that's not the rate of return. So I want to be able to look. If I'm getting 3, and some of these contracts can net about 3.25. I mean, all expenses done, finished.
Yes.
So I want to look at things that are really accommodating. And by the way, you can go out to certain sites that actually play to this, and you can look at everybody that's out there. And I cannot believe, even though we're all fishing out of the same government debenture pool, everybody's numbers are all over the board.
Yeah.
Because mortality credits are different.
Mortality credits are changing. You're going to see that happen in January. The table came out in third quarter of last year. And this year, January, you're going to start seeing insurance companies reflect those changes, and the rates are going to start dropping a little bit.
Then they already started because we're living longer. And so things that used to be, you could get payout rates. I think you're going to see a definite, especially with a low interest rate environment like this, I think you're going to see a lot of these carriers, insurance carriers, bring it down a little bit because they really don't have guaranteed income. Their bond portfolio is just really sucking wind right now.
Correct.
Let's talk about one other thing. I want to talk about this because people always talk about, should I buy this? But should I buy this guaranteed income? I could buy it for myself. I could jointly purchase it.
Correct.
And I could use this inside my qualified plan if I wanted to.
Yes, you can.
So you need to look at all the avenues, which is the better deal.
Right.
Now, when I'm looking at creating a pension for myself, which is really what we're talking about guaranteed income you cannot lift. So are you saying that if I become the Guinness Book of World Records, Jean Clement, who died at 122 years, 164 days, they'd pay that out?
They would pay that out for the rest of your life. And as you mentioned a second ago, if it was a joint life, it paid out for the rest of your life and your spouse's life.
When you think about it, I can't remember Ida's last name, but Ida was the first Social Security recipient.
Okay.
And she put in, I think, some like ridiculous number. I think she put in $25-$30. And then about a couple months later, when she started taking income, she pulled it down for 25
years.
For 24, whatever it was. It was really
Right.
long. And that was great for her, right?
Right.
Now we're looking at 95, 100, maybe post 100.
Right.
This guaranteed income, especially if you put a COLA on it, this is going to go up every year and it's guaranteed for life.
Guaranteed for life. And it's a little different than, say, your 401k or your IRA that you've got right now, because once that bucket runs dry, there's no more income. On these guaranteed income products, once the money goes in there, that is guaranteed to pay out for the rest of your life and your spouse's if you so choose.
And remember, the psychological profile here is this is guaranteed. So if you
Is
say,
there
Steve,
any
I don't
other
have
type of income?
Not really. In fact, only insurance companies are doing this. So you got to look at this. And are all annuities good? No. But ones we cherry pick, we think are really good and they're client centric.
Yes.
Remember, if you're listening to our show on radio, iTunes, or podcast, you can view the video version online at rightonthemoneyshow.com and request information from this segment. In our fifth segment, we're going to talk about your portfolio with Ted Meyer. We'll be right back. Shakespeare once said, "This above all, to thine own self be true." Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and talk show host. It's difficult to make good decisions in life without knowing who you really are. And nowhere in life is this more important than making sound financial decisions. Creating a financial profile addressing your psychological disposition towards money is important, and that's a critical component in the decision-making process on saving, investing, and using insurance to protect against risk. Establishing your own risk tolerance is the first step in providing and building a financial profile so that you can measure your suitability for a financial product or a strategy. There may be many risk tolerance tests available to help you construct your own financial profile. One test that I use could be a good place for you to start, and I'll email it to you free and without obligation. The test will take about 10 minutes, and you'll be able to calculate the results in the comfort and privacy of your own home. So just go to www.rightonthemoneyshow.com and click on the free risk tolerance test. Once you calculate the results, you'll have an understanding of your attitude towards money. Well, welcome back to Right on the Money and our money tips for the new year for 2016. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Savant, financial columnist and money color commentator. In this segment, we're talking about your portfolio with Ted Meyer, nationally recognized retirement expert and registered investment advisor, right? Or no, IRA.
IAR. Yes.
IAR, investment advisor rep. And we're talking, Ted, when we're talking about this, we're talking about the right asset mix. You know, I always think about, well, I want a floor and a guarantee. There's one.
Yep.
You know, I'm looking still for a little bit of growth. There's two.
Yep.
I don't know if I have the propensity for any of this because I don't know if I can risk things.
If I can stand the risk.
Well, let's talk about that. I'm going to suggest to our audience today that if you've never taken a risk tolerance test, it's not an end all, it's not perfect.
Starting point.
It's got a very good starting point. If you've never taken a good risk tolerance test, and I have that, if you want, you can order it. I'll say, write me at Steve at writeonthemoneyshow.com, and I'll send it to you. You know, just because you need to really look at some of these things. I think that'll really help you. A risk tolerance test, the one I do is about 10 minutes
They're
max.
usually 10, 15 questions.
You're going to have some questions, and it's going to give me an idea of where you're at. Now I'm going to ask you this, Ted. You've been in this thing now for a little while.
Yep.
How come when I take I have a client take a risk tolerance test, and then I look at his 401k portfolio, they don't match. Their risk is, they're conservative by the test.
Yep.
I'm looking at their portfolio, and it's aggressive.
It makes no sense, to be honest with you. None of it matches up. I think folks look at their 401ks as something that I'm not going to touch until I retire, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So they look at the funds that are available to them inside their 401k. They might have 5, 10, 15, 30, 50 different options in there. They look at last year's returns. They pick the one that did the best. They circle it, and they go, put all my money in that. And they don't understand. They don't have an advisor helping them with their 401k. And you saw that happen back in 2000 when you had all these folks at or near retirement and their 401ks took a dive. You saw it happen again in 2008. So it's important that your 401k matches up with your risk tolerance.
Now, I've noticed this in a little tribute to women here, that when I have a female take a risk tolerance test and I look at her 401k, it's actually
It's
pretty in the
usually
game.
similar, yeah.
It's very similar.
As men, we like to take a little more risk.
Well, that tells me that guys are psychopathic liars. Okay. But bottom line, we want to look at risk tolerance test for our portfolio mix.
Correct.
We want to look at liquidity. Do I have liquid money I can get to
Yep.
in case I need it?
Correct.
How big is liquidity in retirement?
Liquidity is huge in retirement, especially when you're looking at a retirement red zone. As we said, those first 5 years of retirement, it's a whole new ballgame for you. You're not sure how much. It's better to have a little more liquidity in the first 5 years as you ease into retirement than it is to be having to sell things to get out of and get cash.
Now, Ted, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here.
Okay.
I have young guys in their 35. He came to me, he's 35. We were at one of those cocktail hours you go to at a Christmas party.
Yep.
And he says, Steve, I have 30, 40 years to go before I retire, so I have plenty of time. I was told by my advisor that I should just go ahead and put it to the wall. Aggressive growth funds, Is time the dictator in this? I mean, is that an indicator?
Time is one of the indicators, but it's certainly not the most important. There's an old rule of thumb that says take the age 100, subtract your age from that, and that's the amount of risk that you should have. So if you're a 35-year-old gentleman, you should have 65%, the reverse of that, in risky investments.
Okay, but let me ask you this, though. What if
That's just the starting point.
That's the starting part. So let's say I agree with your thing. I say, hey, I got plenty of time. But then I did the test.
Yep.
And I am like, wow, I am a kind of a moderate conservative here.
There you go.
All right, now I go through 2008. Now remember, a lot of the millennials, they started into the market with their 401ks about year 2000. We had 4 loser years in that 4 period with S&P 500.
Large loser year.
Okay, big one. And remember, to 2001, 2, and 3 were accumulating. That was accumulated losses 3 years in a row.
Correct.
Now, I'm thinking that when we got to the 10th year, they were even money maybe.
If they were lucky,
maybe.
they were even money.
They were even money maybe. So even though they may have all this time, I've noticed that sometimes if you don't have the psychological, intestinal fortitude.
If you think about what keeps us up at night when we go to bed.
Yeah, that's it.
For a lot of baby boomers and folks that are working right now, it's how is my money performing? And if you went through 2009, 10, in 2009 and 2010, those were 2 10-year decades in a row where your money was flat or down.
Yeah.
And if that keeps you up at night, then your risk tolerance isn't as high as you think.
Right. And I think you need to be honest.
By taking that test.
I'm thinking like Shakespeare says, to thy own self be true. You need to really take this test and
Yes.
be honest about it. We're not trying to hit a home run. We're trying to impress people at the cocktail
Right.
hour at the golf course.
And then I recommend taking a test every couple years after that because your feelings about this stuff is going to change.
Now, I've noticed that some people complain about their returns. They just don't seem to add up. And part of that I've noticed is the actual fund or
Fund expenses.
expenses or any
Yep.
product. Right? Most products have
Right.
expenses. So I don't care what they are.
Yes.
So they're all going to have
Nothing's for free.
products. My issue is a full disclosure. For example, 4 years ago, we had introduced to
403B.
us the 408B2.
Yep.
This 408B2 said you have to fully disclose all charges in your 401k so the participant of the 401k knows what he's getting into.
Correct.
Okay, that was new. So when we got that, we found out, oh my gosh, there's some admin charges here, some compliance 404C compliance charges. There's some numbers, but what really got me was that the expense charges of the fund, that I've known because we have to have that
Right, that's disclosed.
disclosed in the prospectus. But
Right.
you said, oh no, there's more.
There's more of that. There's something called the Statement of Additional Information called the SIA. The SIA is another piece that should be disclosed to everybody that also talks about the cost of the fund, things that you don't see, the marketing costs, a few other things that are in there that can add up to a lot of money over time. It doesn't seem like a big deal now, but I think the last report from Morningstar said that averages about 1.44% per mutual fund. So if you look at the expense of a fund, let's say you're paying 1% for the fund, you add another 1.44 of SIA fees on the back end, then you put on your investment advisor's fee on top of that. You're 3.5%, 4% before you even get a return.
And well, I'm going to stop you there. Okay, I just want to make sure we got this correct. In the prospectus, it's going to disclose the fund's expense.
The expense load,
But
correct.
but the SAI, statement of additional information, is not in the prospectus. Is that what you're saying?
It is not in the prospectus, correct.
There might be a few out there, I don't know, but most of them, no.
Yeah. Generally speaking, it's not there.
If I go out to I got to the internet, I can find it as a client, but nobody told me I even needed to track it down.
Yeah, and you need to track it down, because when you look at this stuff and you think about the things you control when you're investing, I can control the amount of risk I take. I control, to some extent, the taxes, and I need to control the fees. Well, you can only control the fees once you have full disclosure on what all the fees are.
Well, I'm trying to always think of full disclosure to the client to understand when we're shopping and we're doing things on the basis of expense loads, we need to incorporate the SAI, the statement of information fee, these extra costs.
Yes.
We need to, if we're in a 401k, we need to look at the full disclosure, although now that's with 408b2, that's online. We should be able to have access to it.
That's gaining headwind out there, but there are still a lot of 401k plans out there that the participants don't understand the fund expenses, the investment advisor expenses, company expenses that are in there.
I'm thinking when you're looking at a fund, you want to try to figure out what's my best return based on my beta risk. I've taken the test. I kind of know where I'm at. And then who's pricing this the best? Because, that really matters. And I've seen commercials on television that underline and underscore this, where it says, listen, over these years, there's thousands and thousands of dollars being spent on expenses.
Yeah, when you just look at an expense of 1% over 10 years, that's a significant amount of money.
Well, to me, that's a big issue. And listen, we're always looking for fixed assets. I want to park money in money market funds. I just found out, oh my gosh, my money market fund is paying nothing and they're still charging me? What's with that?
Yeah, that's what's going on right now. 10, 15, 20 years, we had CDs that were paying 4, 5, 6%. Some of you still remember days when you had double-digit returns on CDs. And those came due, and it's like, well, where do I go now? Well, I think if you go on websites like Bankrate and try and find out national averages on CDs, if you can get 1 right now, that's fantastic. If you extend 4 or 5 years, they might give you 1.5, 2, 2.25. But that's not enough to live on. And so a lot of folks come to us and say, I've got my part that's in equity. I need my stuff that's safe, and I need safe alternatives. And you look at safe alternatives, you've got CDs, you got money markets. Well, those aren't paying anything. So we start looking into the insurance industry, and we start looking at things like guaranteed income annuities, or we look at things like annuities that pay a set rate of return over a period of time that compete with CDs out there. So you can get a fixed rate annuity that might be a 3 or a 5 year or something like that. Those rates are typically higher than CDs right now.
And you don't have to pay taxes until
you don't
use
pay
the money.
taxes, which is nice. And then if some of you want, you take a look at index annuities where you might be able to get a little higher return, but it's not as friendly as the
And just
fixed
remember,
rate
when you're
annuity.
thinking about expectations on returns, I mean, here, as we close out the show, I mean, you're trying to pull from your 401k and so forth. You're saying, well, I'm going to pull 6%. I don't know about that. 4%. I don't know. I think we're down around 3 right now.
I think I saw 3.8 the other day was the expected rate.
You better start looking at how conservative we can pull this money out.
I mean, you start looking at a portfolio where someone had, $500,000 20 years ago, and we could run an average rate of return of 8% on that. That's $40,000 that they could usually take off of that and not worry too much. And now you've gone from 8 to 6 to 4 to somewhere in the 3s. 4% on $500,000 is $20,000 a year. That doesn't help a lot of folks.
No,
They need additional income from that standpoint.
I really want us to have a wake-up call so that we can understand our money. It's going to be our retirement. It's going to be a long retirement.
Yes.
I want to make sure that I have decent expectations on returns, expenses, taxes. All this matters. As I've said time and time again, this is not a do-it-yourself job.
No, it's not.
Well, it's our retirement. We're talking about that, and that's our show for this week. I want to thank Ted Meyer for being my guest. But before I go, I want you to remember what the good Reverend John Wesley once said. Make all you can, give all you can, save all you can. I'm Steve Savant. We'll see you next week.
For more information on this week's money topics, just go to our website at www.rightonthemoneyshow.com and follow Steve's daily postings on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. When it comes to retirement, money management, small business, insurance coverage, college funding, or budgeting, we have the interviews you can use.